Good evening. It's now 6 p.m. and the regular session of the Planning Commission of the City of Lancaster, please come to order. Tonight, Vice Chair Hall will offer the invocation, and Commissioner Teresiano will lead us in the pledge. If you'd all please stand.
Bow your heads. This is a prayer in honor of Black History Month by Dr. Martin Luther King. Most gracious and wise God, before whose face the generations rise and fall, Thou in whom we live and move and have our being, we thank Thee for all of Thy good and gracious gifts, for life and for health, for food and for raiment, for the beauties of nature and the love of human nature. We come before Thee pitifully aware of our inadequacies and shortcomings. We realize that we stand surrounded with the mountains of love, and we deliberately dwell in the shadow of hate. We stand amid the forces of truth and deliberately lie. We are therefore offered the high road, and yet we choose to travel the low road. For these sins, O God, forgive. Break the spell that binds our minds. Purify our hearts that we may see Thee, O God, in these turbulent days when fear and doubt are mounting high. Give us broad visions, penetrating eyes, and power of endurance. Help us to work with renewed vigor for a warless world, for better distribution of wealth, and for brotherhood that transcends race or color. In the name and spirit of Jesus we pray. Amen.
Please join me in saluting our great nation.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And welcome all of you. May I have the roll call, please?
Commissioners Adriana Cook.
Present.
Miguel Coronado. Absent. Cassandra Harvey.
Present.
Fabian Teresiano.
Here.
Vice Chair Randy Hall.
Here.
Chairman James Vose.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Public business from the floor. If an individual is unable to stay for the entire meeting due to extenuating circumstances, we offer a short period of 10 minutes now for anyone who would care to offer testimony or comment. You'd be limited to 2 minutes each. Do we have any early speakers?
No, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. Any person then who would like to address the commission on any agendized item is requested to complete a speaker's card for the recording secretary and identify the agenda item you'd like to speak on. Each person then will be given an opportunity to address the commission when that item is called. Applicants and their representatives typically are not limited to time other than the pleasure of the commission. Speakers for and against the project would be limited to 3 minutes each. The first item of business is the approval of our minutes of the regular meeting of January 25th, 2016. I'll point out to you that we just received them, so if we'll take a few moments to peruse them to make sure that they meet our memory test. Your memory test. I have no memory.
Chairman Vose, I'll make the motion for the approval of minutes for the regular meeting of January 25th, 2016.
Thank you.
I second.
Thank you. Any further comment or discussion? Please vote.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. For the record, we received under item 3B an amended condition list tonight. We've also received correspondence. For item 2, which is what we call an uncontested letter. Item 3A, B, C, and D, uncontested letters, and 3F as well. However, we have not received any correspondence that I'm aware of on 3E. Is that correct? All right, very good.
We did receive this too.
We also received a letter from Barbara Newsom on item 2. Letters in opposition to the application, I should say. All right, then. So without objection, we'll open the public hearing on conditional use permit number 15-21. And may we have a staff report, please?
Chairman Vose, Commissioners, this is an application for a Type 21 license at an existing business that currently has a Type 20 license. It is currently categorized as a convenience market due to its size. It is not. It is under the size for a grocery store. Getting a Type 21 license would categorize it as a mini mart per the code. The sales floor area that would be devoted to alcohol upon approval would be approximately 536 square feet, and this would be 6.6% of the gross floor area. And this and its categorization as a mini mart would make it a primary off-sale establishment, which means it would need a distance waiver. A distance waiver would be part of the CUP because there is a residential complex within 275 feet of the property. The staff is recommending approval because the proposed project meets the zoning requirements, meets a community need, and it's not believed to adversely affect any nearby businesses or residences.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Would you comment on you mentioned they currently have a Type 20 license, which is sale of beer and wine.
Yes.
Any restrictions on that from the city currently?
In terms of amount or kind, I believe let's see.
The existing Type 20 is a deemed approved use. It's not being regulated under a conditional use permit.
So it's an existing nonconformance. Then when the previous owner and the current owner, would that be the way to describe it?
The existing Type 20 ABC license is not subject to the alcohol. Well, it was approved prior to the adoption of the city's alcohol ordinance.
Right. And so the transition from one owner to the next then without a gap in ownership then allows that to continue under the current operation?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right. Any questions of staff before we hear from whomever wants to address us?
Since we have a recommendation from the city to approve this, and I didn't see anything in the conditions about putting the standard conditions on the beer and wine. Would that be part of the Type 21 license, would be to put those standard conditions on?
Yes, it's subject to the standard conditions, which is that 1029, 1529? Those are the standard conditions for off-site sale of alcohol.
Thank you.
Could you briefly define what those are?
Well, there's, I think the most important ones in this context would be that 22 through 25, which would be that no malt beverage products shall be sold in individual container size. Has to be either 4 or 6 packs. 22 is no sales of individual container cans or bottles of beer is allowed. Spirits cannot be sold in containers less than 350 milliliters, and wine can't be sold in containers less than 750 milliliters. Other than that, I think
Very good, thank you.
One more question.
Go ahead.
If we approve this, would those conditions will be imparted upon him, but if we don't approve it, it'll just stay the way it is?
Yes.
All right, very good. Anyone else? All right, do we have speakers on this, Mr. Ludicky?
I have no identified speakers on item 2, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Is the applicant here and wish to address us? You're not obliged to, however, you certainly may if you'd like to.
I am the applicant, and
You have to come to the microphone. We can't hear who you are. So just tell us who you are.
my name is Anton Abdulatif.
Good evening. And
Evening, how are
you're
you?
not obliged to offer testimony, but you certainly may if you like.
One thing I just want to add to the conditions we have. Nowadays, there is such a thing called IBA beer, which is something you should enjoy with your dinner, with your companion. It's not a something bring the homeless or the winos around the facility. If I may add that, I will have that to be sold in the store. That's the only thing I have.
Have you discussed this with staff prior to tonight?
I have not.
See, all right. You understand the conditions that have been provided to you, in
I-
effect?
I do agree to everything. Everything is great. I'm not looking to sell any singles or to sell any containers less than 200 or 350 millimeter. And what a coincidence. The beer they making nowadays for IBA, which is high quality beer, $10 and $15 bottles, homeless, they cannot afford that. And I'm sure most of the community, they do enjoy this kind of beer. I would love to sell that in my store, and it's not for people to hang around.
Can you share with us the compelling reasons you may have to suggest that we should consider an approval of a Type 21 license, which is spirits.
Oh. As a citizen of United States, and I'm sure I'm part of the community, I do enjoy glass of wine, a glass of beer. Some people, they do enjoy glass of spirit with dinner. And I have a lot of people came into the store, and I made a survey. Most of the people, they would say, we love to buy the alcohol from here, and instead we shop the meat and the produce and the grocery from here. We have to turn around and drive another mile or two to buy the spirit. So I'm trying to be, as a businessman and looking out for the community, to furnish everything I can to my customers. That's the main thing.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
Someone else may have questions for you.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Go right ahead.
On the beer, the IPA, would you sell those as singles? Is that your plan?
The manufacturer, unfortunately, they only make them in 24 and 25 ounce bottles. And just like I mentioned to you, they are highly expensive beer. Minimum $7 to $10, and you go on to $50 a bottle. So
$50?
$5.
Did you say $50, $50, or are you saying?
$50, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So those kind are expensive. I'm just asking if I may sell it because I know I'm not going to bring homeless to the town or to the premises. And this is some people they enjoy with their dinner or with their occasion.
Do you own any other stores?
I do.
How many?
I have about 15 stores in my name.
And how many in the Antelope Valley?
In Antelope Valley, I have one in California City. I have one in Ridgecrest. I have one in Trona. I don't know if that's familiar to anybody. Trona Town, where they make the chemicals. That's in Antelope Valley.
Okay. Have you had any issues, violations, or citations at any of your stores?
I never had any violation myself as me, but I did had one violation selling to a minor, which is an employee, and he did make a mistake. He asked the customer for ID, and the ID was fake. That's the only time we had such an issue.
And do you offer training to your employees on how to sell?
Every 6 months, we do that. That's why I never had any tickets or any problem or any issue with the city or the police department or the alcohol beverage control
In all 15 stores?
in all 15 stores, ma'am.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Go ahead.
Ben's Corner has been in business a very long time, as long as I can remember. So I find it interesting why you would want to change the business model at this point in time. But are you running the entire store, or is the meat department run separately? Why separate proprietor?
Good question, and I respect you for that. I just told you about this bringing homeless to town or to the neighborhood or to the facility over there. Even if I turn to the store, to alcohol store or to liquor store, I don't have any clientele over there. I love the meat department we have. It's been there for 45 years. Joe is known by the whole Lancaster. We have the most beautiful meat there. And also we have the very high quality vegetable and fruit people they enjoy. And not a wise idea to turn that market to a liquor store. So that's not my attention, and that would be very bad decision to do so.
But that other subsection of the store, the meat cases and everything, is that under your ownership, or is
I missed to answer that. You're right. The meat department, it's leased by the meat man, by Joe. His name is Joe. Let's put his name. He pay every month, monthly rent, and he been there for a long time, and he's looking to have a long-term lease to be in the store. And he's already happy by us being there 3 months. We already improve the produce and the grocery in the store. So he's leasing the spot. Sure.
Anyone else? The business model that you have and my memory of Ben's Corner through the years shopping there, it's primarily fruit, vegetables, and high-quality meat. That's basically the model, and that's still the model?
Exactly. That's the way it is, and that's how it's going to
So
stay.
you're proposing to add 18 to 20% of the sales area for spirits and wine and additional beer by this application. Do you currently sell single beverages, single alcoholic beverages, beer and wine in single?
We have 6 doors of cooler over there now, and two of them for soda, one of them for milk, one of them for dairy. The rest of them like 3 doors. Barely we have 6 bags and 12 bags. That's all we have now, and that's what sells over there.
Nothing, under your current
We don't sell any singles.
under your current permit, you would not be limited, however, to sell the whatever you call it. What was it called?
The IBA.
Craft beer.
Craft beer, yes, sir.
Craft beer. You wouldn't be prohibited now from selling that if you chose to.
Well, if I could have it, I really appreciate it. If I'm gonna not to approve it, you guys want to approve it, it's okay with me, but it's a main thing in the alcohol business. I mean, not homeless business or people who hang around in the liquor stores and they drink Old English 21 or those kind of beer with malt liquor where
We're very familiar with those.
You know what I'm talking about, and I know what I'm talking about. I've been in business for 40 years, so I have myself in your hand. If you want to approve that BA beer for me, I really appreciate it. If you cannot, that's totally up to you guys.
All right, very good. Anyone else have any questions of the applicant? Anything further you wish to add?
I want to thank you very much. You've been something.
Very good. Thank you for
Thank you.
appearing tonight. Do we have any other speakers on this?
No other cards, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. So then it'd be appropriate to close the public hearing without objection. Do we have any discussion from anyone? Anyone? I have a couple of comments. In recent years, we've seen our community change dramatically. The clientele that live here, kinds of problems that we have seen from the misuse and overuse of alcoholic beverages. It's been my vote for a number of times to vote no on any type 21 opportunity. I see no compelling reason personally to approve a type 21 license tonight. That's just my point of view. I don't see that this applicant has demonstrated the need for the public convenience or overall necessity. It's my belief that any additional type 21 license in this community is an over concentration of alcoholic beverage licenses. That's just my point of view. The applicant, I'm sure, is a very successful business person. He's obviously testified that he has a number of stores throughout Southern California or Central California, whichever you want to call Torona. I'm not sure what I know what I'd call Torona, but at any rate, that's another story. So my remarks are not directed to the applicant personally or his business model. It's just my personal belief that type 21 alcoholic beverage licenses and additional proliferation of them in this community is one too many. And with that, I'll be quiet. Motion's in order if somebody care to offer it.
I move that we adopt resolution number 16-02, approving conditional use permit number 15-21.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Going once? Twice? No second. Motion fails. So, Madam City Attorney, since the motion failed to adopt, may we consider an alternate motion or not?
Yes, you may consider an alternate motion, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Anyone care to offer a alternate motion? Or a different motion, I should say, not an alternate, but a different motion?
Can we impose the standard conditions for alcohol in a motion?
You can on an approval of the conditional use permit, but if you deny the application, as I think was noted earlier, he simply retains his current situation, his current alcohol license, his current deemed approved status.
Which is limited then to beer and wine sales in any volume, in any container.
Whatever's in accordance with his license that ABC has issued. Correct.
Very good. Thank you. Anyone? You don't want to approve it? Don't want to deny it? Take no action? No action is a denial. All right. No one cares to offer a motion then. We'll move to the next item, which is item 3A. I am correct. Am I not? No
Yes,
approval is
Mr.
a
Chairman,
denial.
that's correct.
All right. With that, and before we go to 3A, with that, the applicant has the opportunity then to file an appeal, I believe, if they choose. Maybe not.
Mr. Chairman, I don't believe that is an appealable matter because
We didn't act
you
on it.
didn't act on it. You didn't make a decision. There's no decision to be appealed.
We made a decision not to make a decision. But it's not appealable then.
If you'll bear with me, let me mull that over a little bit, and I'll get back to you before the meeting is over.
All right.
I just, let me mull a little bit.
Well,
Thank
we
you.
want to be sure because
Absolutely.
we don't want to leave the applicant hanging.
I completely
However,
agree.
We need to understand here just so folks are clear on what they need to do.
I agree. My first impression is that this is not appealable, but I just want to mull a little bit and maybe do a little research while you all are looking at the next items.
If we had a second, we could have voted.
That's true. That's true. All right. We are on 3A, right? Okay. Item 3A is a tentative track map number 61535, which is a request for an extension. So without objection, the public hearing is open on this item. As I pointed out earlier, we've received uncontested letter on this particular one. Anyone care to hear a staff report? Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, we do have 2 speaker slips on this item.
Oh, all right. Then we will hear a brief staff report.
Good evening, Chairman Vos, Commissioners. This is a request for a 1-year extension for tentative track map 61535. This is located on 57 acres on the southeast corner of Avenue J and 45th Street West. It's a subdivision for 240 single-family lots in the R7000 zone. This map was originally approved back in October 17, 2005. In 2007, the Commission approved a request for a time extension for 1 additional year. The state extensions carried the expiration into October 17, 2015. This is the second of 3 available extensions for this map. Staff recommends approval of the time extension, which would carry the expiration to October 17, 2016. Staff has asked that the applicant provide a conceptual redesign. That redesign is provided with your staff report. You'll see that there are 2 maps in your packet, one being the original approved map, and there is another map that shows the redesign concept layout. The conditions of approval have been modified to reflect the redesign. And that concludes staff's report. Welcome any questions you may have.
Thank you. Just for the public's understanding of our process, the Commission typically meets 1 week or 2 weeks prior to this public meeting, where we are briefed by staff. However, we do not deliberate nor do we vote. It is a public meeting and it is open to the public. However, it's a briefing rather than an action item. So all of these items that are before us on our agenda tonight, we've spent a couple of hours being entertained by our outstanding staff and sharing all this information with us. So if it looks like we're not paying attention, it's because we've spent a lot of time looking at it prior to this meeting. So appreciate your understanding. So we have speakers.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
May we hear from whomever?
David Paul.
Mr. Paul. David Paul. Did you know, Mr. Paul, that our camera faces that way?
I love that. I love that. Thank you for that. Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, good evening. Since you were so kind, I want to recommend everyone look up at the moon tonight and see Jupiter off to the left. You can actually see this huge planet that's almost 1 billion miles away. It blows my mind. I hope you all like Pearls Before Swine, the comic strip and the paper. I love this. And here Rad is on hold with his computer doesn't work. And he is getting angrier and angrier, and the guy finally comes on the line. He starts running down the checklist. The first question he asks him is the computer plugged in? And Rat gets all crazy. You held me on hold, and you're going to ask me this stupid question. He says a few more profanities and hangs up, and he goes around the back of his desk, and he looks, and there his computer's unplugged. So I appreciate what you guys do. You run through the procedure, the checklist, you make sure everything's right. And as I was reading this tonight, you know, we've been through this before with these extensions, and the reason they're not getting extensions is there's no water. And I went to the Water Master meeting, and they're not going to even be able to sit the landowners contingent because of other complications, and this is just going to further complicate things. But I read through here, in order to obtain a conditional will serve letter, the project applicant must secure a water supply entitlement sufficient to meet the project. So, you know, getting back to Rat here, the first question on my list would be, can you get the water? And I don't know why we keep talking about all these things if there's no water. And I really came to learn tonight and understand the process, and I'm hoping someone can explain to me what the situation is with the water, why we don't consider that. If you know something I don't about whether or not this project is going to get water, you know, that's what I'm looking for. Someone that has a broader understanding of why we don't make sure they have water before we even talk about this stuff. So I'll sit down and listen to you, and thank you for your time. Thank you for the cameras pointing at me.
Thank you, Mr. Paul. Staff will address your comment after we hear from the next speaker, so we can address them all at once.
Glenn, B-E-V-E-R, Beaver.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear your last name, sir?
Beaver.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. My name is Glenn Beaver. I've been resided in Lancaster for over 40 years and recently retired after a career as a NASA engineer over that same period. I have a home adjacent to TTM number 61535, and I have some concerns. I read the staff reports filed over the last decade and paid particular attention to the initial study environmental report. Some questions in the environmental checklist and discussion which caught my eye are as follows. 3D, expose sensitive receptors to substantial pollutant concentrations. 3E, create objectionable odors affecting a substantial number of people. 7B, create a significant hazard to the public or environment through reasonably foreseeable upset and accident conditions involving the reasons of hazardous materials into the environment, release of hazardous materials into the environment. This one has a finding of magnetic anomalies in gasoline-impacted soil with the mitigation of excavation and removal prior to ground disturbance. All the above except for 7B were rated as less than significant impact. 7B was rated as less than significant impact with mitigation. A few points. What I keep seeing in the mitigation or discussion was the assertion that the prevailing southwest winds will dissipate the material or noise. And the example of sensitive people was the Lancaster High School, which is about 1.5 miles or 2 away. I live immediately to the east of the tracks and would be in the front lines receiving any material kicked up by the construction due to those southwest winds. I suppose you could perhaps keep it down by the non-existent water. My wife is extremely sensitive to environmental issues, and any sustained construction activity will cause her to be basically non-functional. How the removal of magnetic anomalous and gasoline-impacted soil, which is presumably by some kind of excavation, how that will prevent it from becoming airborne is unclear to me. The medical concerns of the few are not captured in the, quote, substantial number of people, end quote, of 3E. The example of sensitive being defined by a high school 2 miles away versus the sensitivities of those living next door is, in my view, inadequate. The discussion for item 7 reports that project use would consist of typical household cleaners, fertilizers, pesticides within the landscape area. These materials and their use would be similar to that of the surrounding residential area, so the impact is considered less than significant. My wife cannot tolerate perfumes in newspapers or even fertilizer in the yard. The prevailing winds over open desert has served as a buffer, but construction of a new tract immediately upwind of us will cause significant problems. In short, I ask the Commission to consider not approving an extension of TTM 61535 and to reevaluate how the impact studies are accomplished. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bieber. Bieber, right?
Fever with a B.
All right, thank you, sir. Do we have any other speakers?
No, Mr. Chairman.
All right, then. Would staff please address both of the speakers' issues that they raised? Mr. Paul, relative to water, which is a standard condition that we have. We're not the water district, so we don't control the source. But at any rate, go ahead.
You know, these maps were approved 10 years ago, roughly. At the time of original submittal and review, we required that the applicant obtain a water availability letter. That allows us to perform our environmental initial study checklist and to have some type of assurance that there's water available. Now, as we go through these extension processes, we don't ask them to obtain another water availability letter, but we do include some conditions which are fairly standard for our extensions. They are listed as number 12 and number 13 on the conditions list as part of the conditions of approval that ask that the applicant secure permanent water supply entitlements. So in other words, we still ask that the applicant do what they need to do to ensure that water can be provided to the site, and in addition, pay whatever fees may be assessed to obtain that water.
There was one tentative track map we did a while back where the developer received assurances of water that would be pumped out of the Central Valley and put into the aqueduct, and then he would build infrastructure. I think that would more answer the question that there are creative ways to get water other than through LA County Water District and the other ones. Do you remember that specific one?
Yeah, I think you're referring to the Avani project over by 60th and 70th West and Avenue K and L.
He was going to go through some pretty extensive infrastructure to bring the water in.
Yeah, that project is still under review. It's in our processes.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
if I may add,
Go ahead.
there is a process that LA County Water Works has established to obtain water, and they have not indicated to us at this point that it's impossible to obtain. However, it does not necessarily mean that it is economical to obtain. The requirement in order to record a final map is that water is available, and that there's a will serve letter provided from the water agency, in this case Los Angeles County Water Works. From our standpoint as a city, that is the ultimate control that we have over this. You cannot do a subdivision, you cannot construct unless that water is available. But to, emphasize Vice Chairman Hall's comment, it's not our issue to solve the applicant's dilemma either on water, and there may well be ways that they can obtain it. That may include ultimately purchasing those water rights from someone else who has them, or making some other kind of agreement for long-term water supply. But from our standpoint as a city, we are not at this point imposing an independent judgment on whether someone is able to obtain water or not. We will leave that in the hands of the agencies that actually supply it.
So the agency in this jurisdiction has not established a moratorium
No.
on water service. LA County Water Works, as one of the suppliers, not including AVEC, as I recall, the last one I was involved with, they charged $10,000 per unit, plus the AVEC fees. That would be about $2.5 million for this project, on top of AVEC at some $7,000 or $8,000 a unit.
Correct.
So you're looking at about $4.5 million in fees just to secure water rights, unless they have another source. So it really boils back down to the economic feasibility of all these maps that we've been looking at for a long time.
Yes. And it may well be, although I'm not going to sit here and forecast that short of the state granting additional automatic extensions to these maps, that there are probably a portion of them, perhaps significant portion of them, that will ultimately expire and cease to exist simply because they cannot economically obtain the water supply that they need.
Right. Thank you. What about the issues raised relative to the environmental checklist and the responses to those on a 12-year-old review?
Yes, the gentleman raised a number of questions regarding certainly some of the information that was discovered as part of the initial Phase 1 on the site, which did identify the potential for some hazardous material and in terms of the terminology used, the possibility that there are some kind of subsurface tanks that exist. Not an unusual finding, actually, in an area which used to be largely agricultural, that those, in fact, may well exist. There are prescribed procedures for how that is handled, how that material is tested, where it's dug out, and where it's sent. In terms of the issue of varying degrees of sensitivity, we do try our best to use what I would call prudent and reasonable judgment. The city does have conditions in place for how soil is to be stabilized, how things are to be dealt with in terms of grading and other types of activity that occurs in concert with construction. We haven't had a lot in the way of residential construction lately to test that. But we have done quite a bit with some of the solar projects and other things that are within city limits to control that. I can't speak for jurisdictions that are not ours, obviously. But we feel that the diligence that we exercised in preparation of the environmental document remains adequate, that there haven't been significant changes in circumstances or other that would call into question those answers or that information.
Thank you. Anyone else have comments?
I
questions?
actually
Go
do,
ahead.
Chairman Vose. So in reading the staff's recommendation, are we perhaps to grant a 1-year extension until February of 2017, or is it an 8-month extension?
It's essentially an 8-month extension. This was set to expire in October of 2015, but because staff had asked for design changes, we granted them a 60-day extension to work out a design. So it would be a 1-year extension from the last expiration date, which was October 2015.
In the event that there is a motion that's offered, how is that motion to read?
As long as the date is certain into October.
So I won't count months.
Yes. I guess it would be safe to say that the commission essentially granted portions of a 1-year extension previously to allow the applicant time to address design
Understood. Thank you.
issues.
All right, given the testimony and comments from staff, is it still your recommendation then to grant the extension to October 17, 2016?
Yes, it is.
All right, thank you. Anything further? Did I close the public hearing? I don't recall. No. All right. No. The applicant's representative is not here, I'm assuming, so so without objection, we'll close the public hearing and consider a motion.
I move that we grant an extension until October 17, 2016, based on the findings contained in the staff report and subject to the revised conditions list, attachment to resolution number 05-67.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Anything further? Please vote.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if we might return to item agenda number 2.
Yes.
My concern with the question was failure to get a second is not exactly a decision, and the language, the appeal provision language, references a decision. However, failure to get a second is a denial, and that typically is something that has the right of appeal. I have conferred with the city attorney, and she agrees with that. So the failure to get a second is a denial. A denial, therefore, is appealable.
There's another way as well.
Oh, good.
I believe there's another way. So the maker of the motion has privilege for reconsideration. That correct?
Frankly, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to defer to you. I believe you have much more knowledge and experience.
So if the maker of the motion wanted to have us reconsider his motion, and he does get a second, and then we vote, Then there will be no confusion.
That would be correct. There would be an actual decision.
So I will call item 2 back on the agenda and see if the maker of the motion wants to do something.
Yes, I do. Find it here.
We're in no hurry. You haven't had your supper yet, have you?
No, I haven't.
Neither have I.
So I'd like to remake the motion again to adopt resolution number 16-02, approving conditional use permit number 15-21.
Thank you.
I second.
Thank you. All right, do we have further discussion, questions, comments of anyone? Please vote. That's pretty clear. 5 noes.
Motion is denied 5-0. The action is appealable within 10 working days with the filing of proper paperwork and fees with the city clerk's office.
Very good. All right, now we can go to item 3B. So without objection, the public hearing is open on 3B, which is tentative track map number 61554. So without objection, the public hearing is open on this. We have received a uncontested letter on this as well. Anyone care to hear a staff report, or do we have speakers?
No speakers on this one, Mr. Chairman.
All right, what's your pleasure, folks? Okay. No staff report, so without objection, we'll close the public hearing and hear a motion.
I move that we grant a one-year extension to February 21st, 2017, based on the findings contained in the staff report and subject to the revised conditions list attachment to resolution number 06-15.
I second that.
Thank you. Questions, comments? Please vote.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. Next item is item 3C, which is tentative tract map number 62643, which is another request for an extension. So without objection, public hearing is open on this matter. We have a speaker card on this?
No, Mr. Chairman, I don't.
All right. Anyone care to hear a staff report? All right, then it'd be appropriate to close the public hearing without objection and consider a motion.
I'll make the motion that we grant a one-year extension to February 20th, 2017, based on the findings contained in the staff report and subject to the revised condition list.
Thank you. Have a second?
I second.
Thank you. Any further discussion, comment? Please vote.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. Next item is item 3D, which is tentative tract map number 62979, which is another request for an extension, one-year extension. So without objection, the public hearing is open on this item. Do we have any speakers?
No, Mr. Chairman, not on this one.
All right, thank you. So anyone here care to hear a staff report? No? All right then. So without objection, the public hearing is open, or is not open, it's closed, and we'll consider a motion.
I move we grant a one-year extension to February 21st, 2017, based on the findings contained in the staff report and subject to the revised condition list attachment to resolution number 06-18.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Further questions, comment? Please vote.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. Next item is item 3E, which is vesting tentative track map number 62925, which is in a request for an extension to grant a 60-day time extension for future public hearing on April 18, 2016. So without objection, the public hearing is open. Do we have speakers?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
All right, then, please invite them up.
Do you wish a staff report?
Yeah, why not?
Chairman Vose, Commissioners, this is tentative track map extension number 62925, 63.4 acres, located the northeast corner of what will be 85th Street West and Avenue M. This is for a subdivision for 183 single-family lots in the R10,000 zone. The requested revisions, the revisions that staff requested are extensive and would be cumbersome in the conditions list. So we have asked the applicant to provide a revised map before this comes to hearing for the full year. So the request now is just for a 60-day extension for the time to make that revised map.
So the public then will have an opportunity to comment on it on April 18th, once we have a map to evaluate.
Yes, and there's no no contest letter because there are no conditions right now.
All right, very good, thank you. Anything else from the members? Questions, comments? Have the speaker, please.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Randy. Okay. It's not a good night for names for me.
Well, we know your first name is Randy, right?
Randy Acarani. Acarani? Sicilian.
Spell it for me, would you?
Acheronti. It was shortened quite a bit. I was regarding
Welcome.
the 60...
Welcome.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Welcome.
Oh, thank you. This is my first time, so I'm very nervous, and I'm new out here. I just bought out here in August off of L8 and 70th. And actually, I basically trespassed because I go a lot of hiking up there in this area and saw these signs, and the gentleman was referring water, and so he answered my questions. You guys answered my questions, thank you. But the signs, and I just read this, 85th and M, that's where the signs are, so nobody can really see it because you're 2,000 or 2,700 feet, because I measured it out today, where the actual sign is, and you're under power lines. So no one really knows about this. I don't know if anybody else is out here from that area, and that's what I was regarding. I think you would get more representation of the neighborhood. We also, that rain we just bought out here, we had the flood go right through our house, ruined 4 houses down the street from us. So how is that going to affect our development with the traffic going through here, the dust? The gentleman talked about that. The water situation, we're in Quartz Hills. So like I said, I'm very nervous, so I don't know what to really talk about, but that's my main concern was the signs are so far out, no one can see it. Same thing with L8 and the next development, L8 and 85th. No signs whatsoever, but they are underneath the power lines.
And don't worry about it. You're not nervous.
Yeah.
You're doing just fine.
So, like I said, I was talking to my neighbors. They're cops and firemen, all professional individuals as myself. They're fortunate. Basically they told me, Randy, you're trespassing. Well, I hike up there and run up there, and I felt, I'm in the mountains. Basically, that's what, not my mountains where I used to come from, but that's where I'm regarding. And like I said, we first moved in, and that ruined our house. What's going to happen now when you put up 300 homes?
All right. Anything further you'd like to add?
No, I don't think so. I think my girlfriend was coaching me most of it, so.
Did fine.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. We'll try to address your comments. The first has to do with public noticing. Our policy requires a sign to be posted, however, it's not a statutory requirement. Correct?
It's not a statutory requirement of state law, which gives a number of ways to give notice. We actually give notice multiple ways.
Could you tell us what those are?
We provide legal notice in the newspaper. We do provide a posting of all cases, and that includes here in City Hall and at the library and so forth, so that people have that option. We do a mailing to people within, in this case, because the land is designated as urban residential, it would go 500 feet from the boundary of the case. And the sign posting, we require that the sign has to be posted on the actual property, and I do understand his concern in this case because, you know, unless you're running out there or something, as he indicated, you're probably not going to see it. But that is the reason we give multiple notice, hoping that somebody will see it in some way so that they have the opportunity to comment if they wish to.
The agenda items are also posted on the website.
Yes.
2 weeks in advance of this meeting, right?
Yes, we do post agendas and items there also.
With the staff reports?
Staff reports are placed on
The Friday before?
72 hours in advance.
72 hours in advance.
Yes.
Minimum of. Oftentimes are posted earlier. All right. Any other comments of the speaker you'd like to address?
The very issues he's raised, particularly on drainage, is one that we are taking a closer look at in design. And as Tim mentioned in his report, one of the reasons that we're asking for 60 days here is that we want to relook at how the design of this is laid out. Drainage, traffic flow, and our current requirements for how we address those are certainly part of what we want to take a look at in the design of the map.
And this ties to the next item on our agenda as an adjacent development, does it not?
Yes, I believe they're adjacent to each other.
Okay. Anything else you care to add?
If he has any specific concerns or would like to talk with staff a little more in depth, we're more than happy to meet with him.
So we have 60 days, or until our April meeting at least, before this would come back, and we granted the extension depending on the outcome of the applicant's response, could extend further.
Yes.
All right, very good. Thank you. Anything for the members? No? All right then, so without objection, we'll close the public hearing and consider a motion on a 60-day extension of time.
Should it be closed? Should it be closed?
Closed.
The meeting closed?
Did I close it?
Yes.
I did? Yeah. Maybe I didn't, I don't know.
I move that we grant a 60-day time extension for future public hearing at the April 18th, 2016 Planning Commission meeting.
I second that.
All right, thank you. Anything further? Please vote.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. All right, then the last action item is 3F, which is vesting tentative tract map number 66062. Request for an extension, and the recommendation is a 1-year extension until February 2017. And this is an adjacent property. Actually, it's the same applicant, I believe. It may not be necessarily the same owner. So without objection, public hearings open on this. Do we have speakers on this as well?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, same gentleman has listed to speak.
Care to come back and visit with us? Certainly welcome to. Good evening, and you are?
Susan Petracca.
Good
Another
evening,
Italian.
and welcome.
Hi. My main concern basically is the traffic and the flood area. Same thing, because you're talking about almost 300 houses in that same area under the big power lines, and like he was saying, we had that huge flood coming through. There's only M, and then you've got L8, and then you have L. And so there's a lot of houses for those little 3 roads. I don't know how they're going to do that. And it's just going to be so cramped and crowded and
And if you looked at the map, they don't connect.
so it's,
It's actually a standalone project, a mile or so west, or half a mile west. When you look at the, just so you understand, in our community, we have probably 13,000 tentative lots currently active in the community. In the last couple of years, you can count almost on one hand how many
actually go through.
how many have actually developed.
Okay.
So between the water and the general overall economics and access, you're going to live here a long time before you see this particular, in my opinion, this particular map develop. Maybe not.
Okie doke.
More likely you'll see the stuff on 70th and K and L develop sooner because they have infrastructure and paved roads to them. So.
See, we haven't seen any of this because, like he said, we had just moved in, and then we happened to come across the billboards, and we didn't get anything in the mail that we know of, and maybe the old owners.
Yeah, it's property owners within 500 feet
Okay.
that would receive the notice.
So on April 18th, it's a 60-day extension for the first one.
Yes, ma'am.
So we come back then and see what's,
You're certainly welcome to. You can come back anytime.
okay. All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else?
No other speakers, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Any comments you'd like to make in response to the speaker?
One, I just would like to remind everybody that there is a Lancaster City website, and you guys should check that for all the commissions or all the meetings within the city of Lancaster that you live in. And you can stay apprised of what's going on and become participants of our community. And feel free to come to any of those meetings and say what you want to say. So I think it's important to, if you live here, be involved, and you can track it that way.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, then. It's appropriate to close the public hearing on this item and consider a motion.
I move that we grant a 1-year extension to February 17th, 2017, based on the findings contained in the staff report and subject to the revised conditions list, attachment to resolution number 07-09.
Thank you. Have a second, please?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. Further questions, comment? Please vote.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. Brings us to director's announcements. Mr. Ludicky?
In, I believe it was November, if I am correct, when the commission considered the case of alcohol request at the Chevron station at 18th Street West and Avenue K. That is on the agenda for the City Council to consider on appeal tomorrow. So just highlight that for you if you were not aware.
And our vote on that was?
It was a denial. It was a 6-0 denial.
All right. Very good. Thank you.
Do you think you could give us a quick rundown on your Strong Towns meeting you went to?
Sure. I'd be more than happy to do that. if you'll recall, and I believe several of the commissioners were in attendance last March, we had a gentleman from an organization known as Strong Towns, Mr. Chuck Marone, who's a professional engineer, also holds certification in AICP, and he speaks largely to the issues of fiscal solvency for cities. He gave 2 talks in Los Angeles last week, which I was able to attend. One on transportation in the next American city, which really takes a look at the way that transportation systems have been built and what their fiscal situation is from not only a city but a national perspective. And on Thursday evening in Pasadena, I was able to attend what's known as the Curbside Chat, which takes a look at the fiscal implications of development patterns. As the Commission is well aware, we are using information from this organization and taking a good look at the long-term prospects as to how the city's development pattern ought to be played out, what it means from the standpoint of street construction and other things. I always am very enthusiastic when I get a chance to listen to Mr. Marone talk, because I think he speaks in he's able to convey pretty complex subjects in a pretty simple manner. As usual, I gathered more knowledge and understanding from having spent those 4 hours or so for those 2 nights.
Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Anything further? Commission agenda. Anyone? I'd mentioned to Mr. Ludicky that the draft environmental impact report for the Miraloma Women's Detention Center project was up for review, and I believe there was a public hearing on it at the county, not the city, however. And I believe the public comment period no, it's not closed yet, March 2nd. So I don't know if staff is going to make any, I know you've made reviews, I don't know if you're going to make any comment on it.
Yes, I haven't received any direction as to whether staff or the city will officially comment, or at least from our level. There may be comment coming from, the city council or administrative level of the city on the issue.
All right then. Thank you. Anything further? All right, now's the time for public business from the floor on non-agendized items. This portion of the agenda allows individuals an opportunity to address the Commission on any subject regarding city business. Under state legislation, no action can be taken on non-agenda items. Members of the public should be aware of this when addressing the Commission regarding items not specifically referenced on the agenda. And we ask you to please complete a speaker's card if you wish to comment at this time. So do we have any non-agenda item speakers? Anyone? No? All right then. We stand adjourned to our special meeting for agenda review Monday, March 14th, 2016 at 5:30 p.m. here in the Parks, Recreation, and Arts Conference Room. Thank you all for your participation.